What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing good today, and I hope everyone's getting excited for all the gaming news that we're gonna receive this week. I will be streaming some of that, but that will be scheduled for a later date in the week. Today I want to talk and shed some light on a little game that I've been playing the beta for, 33 Immortals. Last week they had a week-long beta, and the game really caught my eye when it was first showcased last year at Xbox Game Showcase. Developed by one of the up-and-coming indie developers out there right now, Thunder Lotus Games. Coming from Jotun, Sundered, and recently Spiritfarer, this is the first crack at multiplayer, and let me tell you, the implementation of its multiplayer and this co-op, it's almost to perfection. It's fluid, varied combat, seamless cooperative multiplayer, and unique raid-like bosses makes 33 Immortals a must-play game. On the surface, 33 Immortal is a multiplayer roguelike game where you play as a sinful soul fighting against God's judgment for your eternal life. Cool's concept, which was inspired by Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. Thunder Lotus art style really blends well with the setting of the game in 13th century Italy. The hand-drawn art is Thunder Lotus's signature at this point. All the games consist of this kind of art style. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? The animation adds a unique factor to them. It kind of has the still animation, and it works well with all the combat too, which can be difficult to strike a good balance. I would like to remind people that this is a beta and things are subject to change, so be prepared for that and the changes coming towards early access. In the Dark Woods, which is the hub, you'll meet different characters of mythology. These characters will give you the ability to apply and upgrade permanent perks to your characters. Other characters will reward you with cosmetic. Other characters will talk about the game mechanics and give you all the ins and outs of all the terms. Along with those mythical creatures in the hub, you can choose up to 4 weapons to run with: a sword, a bow, daggers, or a staff. Let's talk about the combat for a little bit. It doesn't do anything new in terms of roguelikes, but its fluidity and simple mechanics for each weapon, along with the loop for each one, creates this fun and engaging gameplay loop that a lot of us really crave for in a roguelike. If you want to test out these weapons, you can on a practice dummy or go into the tutorial, which will teach you all the mechanics and the moment-to-moment gameplay. Personally, I did try all the weapons but the staff. The staff didn't really feel great to play. It felt like you had to wait a little longer to use a spell, and the movement didn't feel as fluid as the daggers. However, all the weapons do feel distinct. The sword is more in your face and using the parry as much as you can. The window of the parry is very forgiving. The bow is the complete opposite of the sword. It gives you ranged attacks using the bow and the arrow, and once you have arrows sticking out on the side, you can recall the arrows to have an extra damage. But for the one that I played the most, it would have to be the daggers. The mechanics for the daggers, it's pretty simple, but it's fun to engage with. As you attack with the daggers and conjure up combos, you gain greed stacks. These greed stacks can be expended by using the jump attack, and once it hits an enemy, it does a lot more damage. But you can also use the jump attack as an extra dodge. Adding to that uniqueness factor to each weapon, they kind of get their own supers in the form of co-op powers. You do need multiple players around you to activate the power, but if you do have a lot of people around you, which is the recommended way to play the game, you will be able to activate the co-op powers a lot more frequently with that many players around you. The co-op power can increase attack, it can release AoE arrows, it can slow down a bunch of enemies, it can also give you a overshield for 2 other teammates. And depending on how many teammates that are able to engage with that co-op power, those teammates will be able to activate that power and they get the buff as well. Before we start a run, we have 2 maps to choose from. However, when you're first starting out, the 33-player Inferno will only be available to you. Ratio is only available to you when you find a gate key during an Infernal run. The goal of each run is to get currency from the chests and the mini games within the world, but overall, when the torture chambers spawn, that must be all completed before you move on to the next phase, which is another torture chamber, and then the next phase will be a sigil, which is kind of similar to a torture chamber, but it's outside in the world where everyone can come together and tackle that encounter. And the torture chambers are only limited to 6 people per chamber, so that is a little limited. Once you get all the sigil monsters done, you and everyone around that sigil will be able to ascend. The only way for everyone to move on to the next boss is for everyone to ascend. And if there's one straggler that didn't ascend and is still fighting the sigil monsters, we get a spectator view of them. And it's a little hit and miss. It works for most of the time. You can see and dissect what the player is doing, but for the most part, I think that's just something for players to watch when they're waiting for the next steps. Once everyone ascends, you and everyone will be moved to a boss arena where we engage with the final fight. Those are the simple rules to getting through a run, but the moment-to-moment gameplay kind of dictates how we are going to fare in the last boss of the run. If there's like 10 people, we might not complete the run. Even if we have 19 people, we might not even complete the run because a lot of people do have to work together in unison to make the fight go along as smooth as it should be. Let's just start out with the starting run with the Infernal map. The name of the game is to team up with as much players as you can. You can more easily kill mobs, monsters, high-end monsters. You can easily tackle the torture chambers. Those are really difficult when you're going in solo, so having a group of at least 3 to 6 will be the most ideal. And like we talk about with the co-op powers, having that many people around you will allow you to activate your co-op powers more consistently. And the more you can consistently use those abilities, the easier and more digestible the encounters will be. One thing that I hope Thunder Lotus will change a little bit is how we communicate within each run. For a really cooperative game, it's kind of weird that they don't have any voice chat or in-game text, and the only thing they have is emote communication, which works okay, but it can be improved a lot better. Just seeing emotes only for nearby players is helpful for like small puzzles within the area or getting you to activate a co-op power, but the communication for further distance players is non-existent. And the only way you can see if players are having trouble is to open up your map and make your own judgment if they need help or not, and that's just not the best way to go about a cooperative plan. Maybe adding like a ping system along with their emote and icon system would work a lot better, kind of like a MOBA. Communication is such a big part in having a successful run. Having the ability to ping anywhere in the map just creates that decision making a little more tight and rewarding when you can make it happen the right way. That's just my fix or solution for the communication system. I think it works well enough without making people like infuriated by everything that's being said in the chat or voice. I just want to see how it does within the years, the communication aspect of the game, and hopefully they've changed some of it in the early access release. I was talking about throughout the early games, you want to collect as much resources and currencies as you can. Early monsters will get you the currency dust, which will upgrade your health, attack, and co-op powers. This currency and upgrade will only persist through this run, so if you have an access of dust, use it as much as you can, and the only way you can use it is if you collect the full amount of dust, and you would see it on the bottom right corner. Another way to gain these resources and currency is to open chests. These chests will reward you with bones, shards, and keys for the next gate. The bones, like dust, must be used in this run, otherwise it will be lost after the next. And for the shards, those will be used to upgrade your perks in the hub. Once you spend some time gathering some currency and beating some monsters, eventually the torture chambers will start to appear throughout the map. But before those chambers start to spawn, a wave of AoE is there to throw everyone off. It will persist throughout the map, and it's a short duration, so just dodge and you'll get through it. This will happen 3 times through each changing of phases. And once the torture chambers are up, you and up to 6 other players can go into the chambers and complete that to progress forward with the run. Each of these chambers will reward you with loot at the end, and depending if you have the key, which you can buy outside of the chamber with bones. The upgrade from the torture chamber chest is where you can start building your character. This can range from increased attacks to elite enemies, longer duration for your co-op powers, shorter cooldown for your dash. There's a lot of things like that, and it can be stacked with each item. Make sure you have everything you want before entering. There will be a bone altar that you can spend your bone shards for, either on increasing your health and buying you keys, and a teleport stone where you can teleport to other players within the map. The torture chambers are filled with waves of mobs, and eventually at the end of those waves there's like a mini boss that you need to go through before you can open the chest. After you go through 2 sets of torture chambers, 3 sigils will spawn throughout the map, kind of like the torture chambers I was mentioning before. These sigils can get really hectic just because the sheer amount of monsters and abilities, players just popping off everywhere. Especially the sigil is like kind of like this glowing yellow thing on the ground that looks like some of the abilities, so it can get really hectic. Make sure you are maneuvering around as safely as possible. Another piece to the puzzle is right after the sigils spawn, run to them, because there's going to be a wave of light that closes right up until the sigil, kind of like a battle royale, and that kind of condenses everyone into that one spot, or 3 spots in the sigils case. And once those sigils are completed and we ascend, we are teleported into the boss arena, like I said before. And the boss that I fought was Lucifer. Seeing this much players working together for the same goal is such an amazing sight to see, and not something we see in a lot of multiplayer games nowadays, just mostly MMOs. And that thought is reinforced with the last boss in the Inferno with Lucifer. After seeing and fighting Lucifer, going through all his abilities reminds me of big world boss fights like in Guild Wars 2, WoW, a lot of those open world boss fights that kind of seem larger than life. After 3 or 4 encounters with Lucifer, I'm sad to say I've never beaten him. Though it did get me excited to see what the second gate has to offer when it comes to the final boss. Every run is like a lesson session for me. I've always improved for the next run. I've always upgraded my perks, the weapons that can upgrade that I never got to. You can change your weapons if you're feeling dull of the weapons you used most of the time. There's a lot of things that can differ between run to run, and that's just the loop that keeps bringing me back. Thunder Lotus really found something here. The scale of roguelike is something that hasn't really been done before. Even though there are a lot of systems that we see here in other roguelikes, the multiplayer aspect with the amount of players and the co-op power changes that perspective. Thunder Lotus' trademark hand-drawn art style with Jotun, Spiritfarer, and now 33 Immortals always drawn people in. But now they're making a multiplayer game that has great combat and a solid roguelike loop, more of the players are gonna rave about this game to their friends, other communities, and other games. and just a lot of word of mouth that 33 Immortals really would love having. If you haven't tried 33 Immortals, it will be on Game Pass for PC and Xbox, so you don't have any excuses to not try it out. 33 Immortals really has a bright future, and I hope we can see some big improvements and some little changes that I expect to early access and going into 1.0. And that is going to be it for today's gaming sessions. Look out for some Destiny 2 The Final Shape streams coming along this week, along with Summer Games Fest, Xbox Game Showcase, and so much more through the week of gaming news. And if you haven't already, follow and sub to this channel. For my live streams, I will be also live on this YouTube channel and my Twitch channel. Till then, that's gonna be it for gaming sessions, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.